Room 237 costs $400 a night. The door is original, solid steel, 3 inches thick, with a viewing slot that once allowed guards to check on prisoners without entering. The bars on the windows are still there, painted black now, instead of institutional gray. The bed sits where a metal cot once bolted to concrete, but the mattress is luxury foam with Egyptian cotton sheets. The bathroom has heated floors and a rainfall shower, and the guests who pay to stay here do so voluntarily for an experience they call darkly romantic. Welcome to Het Arrestos in Roermond, Netherlands, a 19th century prison that's now a 5-star hotel where you can sleep in a cell that once held murderers and enjoy gourmet dining in what used to be the execution chamber. The transformation from punishment to pleasure is both disturbing and fascinating. Het Arrestos opened as a prison in 1863, designed to hold 150 inmates in cells that measured barely 40 square feet. It operated for 143 years until closing in 2007 when the Netherlands built a modern facility that met updated standards for human rights. The old building sat empty for 2 years. Developers looked at it and saw not historical preservation, but boutique luxury. In 2011, Het Arrestos reopened as a hotel with 105 rooms, each a converted cell, starting at $250 per night and reaching $600 for the premium suites. The marketing is unapologetically dark. The hotel's website invites guests to experience the thrill of incarceration without the inconvenience of a trial. Room descriptions mention the criminals who once occupied these spaces. Room 156 held a counterfeiter in the 1920s. Room 203 housed a woman convicted of poisoning her husband in 1934. Room 312 was the cell of a political prisoner during Nazi occupation. These aren't warnings, they're selling points. Guests book these rooms specifically because of their history, posting Instagram photos of themselves behind bars with captions about doing time in luxury. But Het Arrestos isn't unique. Around the world, former prisons are being converted into hotels, restaurants, shopping centers, and apartments. Each transformation raises the same question. What does it mean to turn spaces designed for suffering into spaces for pleasure? Are these conversions a form of historical preservation or historical erasure? And what happens to the memory of those who suffered when their cells become somebody's weekend getaway? Consider the Liberty Hotel in Boston. Once the Charles Street Jail, built in 1851, it held prisoners including suffragettes, prohibition violators, and civil rights activists. Malcolm Little, later Malcolm X, was incarcerated there in 1946. The building closed as a jail in 1990 and reopened as a luxury hotel in 2007. The original cell structure remains visible in the hotel's atrium. The bar is called Alibi. The restaurant is named Clink. The interior design plays with prison aesthetics: exposed brick, steel railings, catwalks. Rooms start at $400 per night. Guests drink cocktails where inmates once waited for trial, often for months, in conditions a 1973 lawsuit declared unconstitutionally cruel. The marketing erases this context. The Liberty Hotel's website mentions its storied past, but focuses on luxury amenities and proximity to Boston attractions. The suffering that happened here, the overcrowding documented in court cases, the violence between inmates, the suicides in cells that are now premium suites, is reduced to atmospheric detail that makes the hotel more interesting without making guests uncomfortable. In Ottawa, the former Carleton County Jail operated from 1862 to 1972. It held over 150,000 prisoners during its century of operation. Public hangings occurred in the courtyard until 1869. The last execution took place in 1946. When it closed, preservationists fought to maintain the building as a museum. They lost. In 1973, It reopened as the HI-Ottawa Jail hostel, offering budget accommodation in former cells. Guests sleep in bunks where prisoners slept. The hostel runs ghost tours of the execution area. Reviews on travel websites describe it as atmospheric and authentic, praising the real prison experience without the inconvenience of actual incarceration. These conversions follow a pattern. Take the historical suffering, remove its reality, add luxury or novelty. Market the result as experience. The formula works because consumers want edginess without actual danger, history without confronting its horror. Sleeping in a former cell provides the thrill of transgression. You're in a place you're not supposed to be, combined with the safety of knowing you can leave whenever you want. It's prison cosplay for people who will never face actual incarceration. But some conversions attempt a different approach. In Philadelphia, Eastern State Penitentiary chose not to become a hotel. Opened in 1829, it pioneered solitary confinement as punishment. Inmates lived in complete isolation, allowed out of their cells only for exercise in individual yards. The system was meant to inspire penitence. Instead, it drove many inmates insane. Charles Dickens visited in 1842 and wrote that the psychological torture was worse than any physical punishment. Al Capone was imprisoned there. So was Willie Sutton. The prison closed in 1971 and sat abandoned for decades. When Eastern State reopened in 1994, it did so as a museum that refuses to sanitize its history. The cells remain as they were when the prison closed, crumbling, austere, authentically miserable. Audio tours feature voices of former inmates and guards describing the reality of incarceration. Exhibits address mass incarceration, racial injustice, and the ongoing debates about criminal justice reform. There's no restaurant serving gourmet meals in the former death row. No luxury suites in solitary confinement cells. The preservation is deliberate in its refusal to make imprisonment comfortable or romantic. The contrast is stark. Eastern State attracts 300,000 visitors annually who come to learn about the history of incarceration and its ongoing impact. Het Arresthuis attracts guests who want a unique hotel experience and often leave without thinking deeply about what happened in the space they occupied. Both approaches preserve the buildings, but they preserve very different versions of history. The financial incentives favor conversion to luxury. Historic preservation is expensive and rarely profitable. Museums require constant funding, grants, donations. Hotels generate revenue. A developer looking at an old prison sees valuable real estate in desirable locations, city centers where prisons were built before urban sprawl made them expensive properties. Converting to luxury use maximizes return on investment while preserving the structure. The ethical considerations about erasing history become secondary to economic reality. In Ireland, this tension plays out at Kilmainham Jail in Dublin. The prison operated from 1796 to 1924, holding leaders of Irish rebellions against British rule. Patrick Pearse, James Connolly, and other 1916 Easter Rising leaders were executed in the Stonebreakers Yard. The prison is a sacred space in Irish history. When it faced potential redevelopment in the 1960s, public outcry was enormous. It opened as a museum in 1971 and remains one of Ireland's most visited historical sites. The preservation was expensive and ongoing, but the alternative, turning it into apartments or a hotel, was culturally unthinkable. Not every country has that cultural memory or those preservation priorities. In former Soviet states, prisons that held political dissidents have been demolished or converted without significant public debate. In parts of Asia and Africa, colonial-era prisons built by European powers are being erased from landscapes and memories. The question of what to preserve and how to preserve it often depends on who controls the narrative and who profits from the conversion. Back at HI-Ottawa, guests eat breakfast in the former prison chapel. The vaulted ceiling and stained glass windows remain. The pews are gone, replaced by modern furniture. The space is beautiful, undeniably. The renovation preserved architectural details while removing anything that made it feel like a prison. You can photograph yourself there for social media without any visual reminder that this was a place of punishment. The suffering has been aesthetically eliminated. This is perhaps the most troubling aspect of these conversions. They don't just repurpose buildings, they repurpose memory. The physical structure remains, but the meaning changes. A cell stops being a site of punishment and becomes a place of leisure. The transformation isn't neutral. It actively rewrites what the space represents, often in ways that serve commercial interests over historical truth. There are no easy answers here. Buildings decay without use. Preservation costs money. Cities need housing and hotels. But when we convert prisons into luxury accommodations without preserving their difficult histories, we participate in a form of forgetting. We sanitize spaces where human suffering occurred, making them comfortable for consumption. We turn punishment into novelty, incarceration into ambiance. Perhaps the question isn't whether to convert these spaces, but how. Eastern State demonstrates that preservation doesn't require making suffering palatable. HI-Ottawa demonstrates that luxury conversion erases more than it preserves. Somewhere between these extremes might be approaches that honor both the architecture and the difficult history it contains. For now, Room 237 at HI-Ottawa is booked solid for the next 6 months. Guests will sleep in luxury, where prisoners once counted days until release. They'll post photos of themselves behind bars, framing incarceration as aesthetic rather than punishment. And the building will stand, beautiful and hollow, its stones remembering what its new purpose works hard to forget. If you want to explore more stories about how history gets preserved, erased, and repurposed, subscribe to Prison Diaries. Because how we treat these spaces reveals what we're willing to remember and what we'd rather forget.